Our next panelist is Mr. Maurice Greenberg, and before I introduce him, I just want to make sure he's here. Mr. Greenberg, are you with us?
I'm with you.
Okay. Mr. Greenberg is chairman and CEO of CV Starr and Company. He may know more about AIG than any other living American. He served that company for nearly 40 years. He became president and CEO of AIG in 1967. And under his leadership, AIG became the largest insurance company in the world and grew in value from $300 million to $180 billion. Mr. Greenberg is heavily involved in a number of business organizations that are focused primarily on Asian trade. He is now vice chairman of the board of directors and a member of the executive committee of the National Committee on the United States-China Relations, and he's a member of the U.S.-China Business Council. He served on the board of directors of the New York Stock Exchange, and he is the past chairman, deputy chairman, and director of the Federal Reserve Bank of New York. He graduated from the University of Miami and received his law degree from New York School of Law, and he's received a number of honorary degrees. He also served in the U.S. Army during World War II and in the Korean conflict, where he rose to the rank of captain, and he's a recipient of the Bronze Star. Mr. Greenberg?
Thank you very much. I'm sorry I can't be there in person, but I came down with a bug. I just got back from China and probably have a Chinese bug, and I didn't want to spread it around the audience. I agree with much of what was said by the previous speaker, but I'd like to address my comments more specifically to AIG, which is one of the companies that was bailed out. And as many of you know, there's been a lot of controversy published in magazines and newspapers that raise a lot of questions that there don't seem to be answers to, and I think there probably needs to be in order to put the record straight. For example, the original bailout was for $85 billion at 14.5% interest and a fee on top of that. And of that, 50-odd billion, which was reported, was funneled through AIG to counterparties. The question really is raised by many, why was that done that way? The alternative would have been, you have the right to succeed and fail in our country. At least that's the way it used to be. And failure would have been Chapter 11. It would have been reorganized and been back in business in hopefully a relatively short time, because the insurance entities of AIG were very solid, and as many of you know, the company did business in 130 countries and was and should be a national asset. Bloomberg reported very recently that AIG had been negotiating with counterparties prior to the bailout to get a discount. They negotiated a discount of about 40% of the funds that would do counterparties. When they got the loan from the Fed, they were required to pay par rather than the 40% discount that had been negotiated. I think, it's very puzzling, and so one would ask the question, why? And that question has been asked by many. So the terms of a bailout, it seems to me you have to go back and say, what's the purpose? Is the purpose really to help the company get back on its feet, become an employer again in a healthy environment, and a taxpayer again? Is the terms of the bailout such that you try to get as much as you can from the company. I'm speaking now as the government. Get as much as you can and make the biggest profit as you can. Or should it be, as I said, to help get the company back on its feet? AIG is owned now 80% by the U.S. government. The U.S. government doesn't run companies very well. That's the reason you have FedEx, because they can't run the post office very well. And so I've been puzzled by the terms which became so punitive, rather than terms that would aid the company in getting back on its feet and not be a burden, pay the taxpayer back, obviously. It seems to me there's got to be some standards. It can't be just, pick and choose. We'll kill this one and save this one. The day after the bailout, the Secretary of the Treasury at that time, Paulson, went on Meet the Press and said, we're going to liquidate AIG. Well, why? Why was AIG used to funnel funds through itself to third parties? I think there needs to be a commission established of prominent Americans who can get to the bottom of these issues that have been raised by many. I think the introduction said there was an article in Rolling Stone. There are many articles. There are many questions that have been raised. And the answers seem to be very vague. One question that has been raised many times: wouldn't it have been more simple to have, since AIG had a thrift as one of its companies, have a guarantee under AIG Financial Products, because they had a liquidity problem, not a solvency problem. That would have halted everything, because there'd be no more calls for collateral. As it turns out now, the funds are flowing back because the value of many of the CDOs that they insured have increased in value. So there are billions of dollars flowing back. So all that would have been needed was a guarantee for a period of time. You'd pay for it, obviously, as other institutions have done. So why is one institution destined to be liquidated while others got guarantees and paid a fee for that? Hence, I think when I read about all these issues that others have been raising, I think a commission with subpoena powers should be established. Thank you very much.
Okay. And thank you for carrying on in spite of being ill. We really appreciate that. Our next panelist is Dr. Robert McTeer. Dr. McTeer is currently a distinguished fellow at the National Center for Policy Analysis. Prior to joining NCPA, he was chancellor of the huge Texas A&M University system, a system that includes 9 universities, 7 state agencies, and a statewide health science center. Before becoming A&M's chancellor, however, Dr. McTeer spent 36 years with the Federal Reserve System, including 14 years as president of the Federal Reserve Bank of Dallas. As a Fed policymaker, he gained a national reputation as an independent voice and a maverick by dissenting occasionally from the Greenspan orthodoxy. His dissents earned him the sobriquet of the Lonesome Dove. He says he's been called worse, and I completely understand his sentiments.